Hi,
London
Stan, you all right?
calling.
How you doing, Stan? You all right?
I'm very well. Hold on. Let me turn you up a little bit. Chris, looking well, mate.
Thank you. I've just had my haircut, especially, mate.
You've been on a sunbed, Chris.
No, not today.
I've just had a message from Tilly, and I sent him the Zoom link, and I said you better get your kids to see if you can to get Zoom going, because I think he wants to join us. I'm gonna have a chat.
Steve is actually just in the waiting room. I've just accepted him to join now, so he's just joining now.
Fantastic.
So you know, Stan, I know Chris already asked you from us, but we are recording this so we can share with fans.
There will be no swearing or shouting over each other. We will be a joy to be able to watch and to listen and learn from each other. So all good.
Just a bit of background. So my name's Scott, and I run Save Our Southend. We've also got Paul Fitzgerald in here, who also runs the trust, and various other supporters groups in here as well. What I'm probably going to do is, when it hits 8 o'clock, once we know everyone's here, we'll throw the floor open to you, Stan. You can give us a bit of introduction about what's gone on, what's happening, and I'll mute everybody's. And then when you're ready, we can jump in, ask questions, all that.
You don't need to mute everybody. Please just, like I say, I have a tendency to speak. I've done a little bit of due diligence, but I'll tell you at 8 o'clock. Like I say, we'll wait for everybody to get in.
Yeah.
I think from my perspective, obviously a lot's happened in the last 24, 48 hours. I've put several posts on Shrimperzone. Didn't realise I've been a member for 17 full years now. And the aim is simple: to start a process, to ask relevant questions. If I can be a conduit for you guys to be able to do that, to get answers, to be able to find out what the situation is with the club. I've very much separated it. I've got notes here on separating football, business, short, medium and long-term aims and ambitions. But I would just like you to know that from my perspective, I am only here, as I offered Ron in 2000, number of other communications with the likes of Chris, to be able to assist you guys to be able to get your football club to be sustainable, stable, competitive. That's it. So if I can help do that, great. If I can't, that's the way of the world. So we're at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, okay. There's a couple more people just in the waiting room. Just let me admit them, and we're ready to
Tilly there, yeah, I haven't seen him for ages.
Who's that?
Tilly.
Yeah, his name's there.
I can see Napa, Liam, Richard, Smithy, Liam. There's Liam. Hello, Liam. Nice lamb chops, pal. Love a bit of that.
I'll text
you. Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Hello, Christoph.
Hi, Stan.
Kerry, Paul, Michelle.
Hiya.
How you doing? Good to see you. Scott, Chris, Peter.
Hiya.
I can see everybody.
Right, okay then, Stan. Yeah, fire away, please.
So over the last 20 years, I think it was around 2001, 2002, contacted Ron and basically had a coffee with him. I can't remember where the hotel was now, but we had a good hour and a half. And I said, look, it doesn't matter whether it's the T-boy or whether it's a manager or whether it's whatever it is, I'm here to be able to help. I believe in terms of profile, I've had every major newspaper call today. I do a column in the Mirror. I'm halfway through it. The guy I do the column with said, the news desk want to talk to you about this story. I've obviously spoken to Chris. A lot of the radio stations, Essex, Beyond have asked, is that I can only think of Chrissy Powell, who's obviously very busy at the moment with various things at Spurs, with a profile to be able to say wallop. It goes through news organisations, it gives a certain profile, and this is the third time now that I've been in a situation where I've spoken to ownership structures at football clubs. First one was Ron, 2000. as I mentioned, which ended up getting me an interview for the manager's job. Tilly and Brushy and what have you, and had great days, no problems there. I wasn't a qualified football coach, but at that time I thought, can I help? Can I assist? Can I do something? As a 50-year-old man, very happy, solvent, life is good, in a very different place. I pick and choose the things that I want to do in life. And Southend United, because of what the club gave me, which was a platform to be able to play week in and week out, some of the best memories and feelings I've ever had were at Southend. As everybody knows, I've written about, I've said a number of times, the aim and ambition for anybody was to be able to say to Ron or to any owner, look, I'm here if you need me. So I spoke to Fawaz, who was the owner of the Kuwaiti owner of Nottingham Forest about 3 or 4 years ago, contacted by the supporters group, joined a march at the City Ground, was invited into the board of directors. He wasn't there, was then invited by him to his home in Belgravia. And I said, look, this is the situation. Fans aren't happy. You can't keep telling them you're going to keep pumping money in until you win the Champions League, if that's blatantly not the case. And there was a lot of waffle, a lot of bullshit went around. And in real time, I let Nottingham Forest fans know what the situation was, that his number was up. That's not the situation with Ron. I'll come to Ron shortly. But within months, he sold to the owner of Olympiacos, his preferred owner. It's down to Nottingham Forest fans to decide whether the Olympiacos consortium have given Nottingham Forest anything tangible. Remains to be seen. The other one was Tom Fox at Aston Villa. Same thing. Randy Lerner came in. Promises. 3-6 finishes. Martin O'Neill left. Club in a shambles. I just wanted to gauge the mood. So pretty much at every club that I've contacted, that I've had an association with, I've had an immediate meeting with the people that matter and been able to ask questions on behalf of supporters groups. So I sent Ron an email that's been widely circulated on SZ and Chris. I had an email back, I think, from Lisa, his secretary, said, Ron will call you tomorrow. Chris contacted me and said, Tilly wanted my number. I'll have a chat and discuss with Tilly. Whatever we can at some point, be great to catch up. But I'll very briefly outlay what I believe needs to happen. There are very many voices amongst you, and I pop onto Shrimper Zone now and again to gauge the mood. I spoke to a Queen's Counsel and a barrister today that will both offer their services gratis, which I think doesn't happen too often, particularly with a Queen's Counsel. I took their advice on what to discuss, how to discuss, what to do with my own ideas. And I think that the sensible route forward is to have a conversation with Ron that essentially splits the football, takes the football part of the equation away. Again, on forums, everybody will say, we need to do this, we need to do that. It's a case of spending more money or not furloughing staff, or we need to keep Phil Brown up. That's for another day, because at the moment, if you start getting too much into he said, she said about football, it's going to impact on the players. When I signed for Southend, I vividly remember a Jobson out banner. On my debut, I was incredibly nervous, but I just joined a football club, so I had to get on with it. So I'm aware that at least give the players and the management and the technical staff an opportunity to finish the season properly without any interruption. So the business aspect of it is very simple. What does Ron want? Does he want to sell? Does he want a shared ownership structure that includes fan representation, which I'll be perfectly honest, I would love to see for any club of the size of any club, full stop. if you want an example over the last 72 hours of sole ownership structures that say, we've got a CEO, we've got levels and levels and levels of professional people at the club. It's not just about the owner. Virtually every one of the owners of the 12 clubs that are sole owners didn't tell the crucial staff at the football club what the hell was going on regarding the Super League. That's including chief executive officers, all technical staff, all playing staff, all management. Now, if you are continuing to want, as a body of supporters, I'm a supporter as well, a sole ownership structure, all you are is deferring. Somebody comes in, I'm going to promise you the earth. Within 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, somebody dies, the kids don't want to take it on, you're deferring a problem. If you have a situation whereby you have 50+1 as part of the constitution of Southend United Football Club, every single one of you, your children, your grandchildren, in perpetuity, like Bayern Munich fans, like St. Pauli fans, like Dortmund fans, know that they have the say in their club. So does Ron want to sell, have some shared ownership structure, or stay on as is? I did put a line in the email to suggest that the status quo couldn't be maintained. Again, that's for you guys. Protests, demanding change, voting with your feet. I know are all very, very difficult things to do for passionate football fans that love their club. But when people say to me, you're not an industry professional, I'd say, well, Gary Neville wasn't an industry professional owner. Matthew Benham, that I've sat down with a couple of times at Brentford, isn't a football man. They all came with fresh ideas, and they all came. I don't particularly like the Salford City model. I don't like the sole ownership model of Matthew Benham, as I've said. But if you can incorporate a structure at the football club that gives it short, medium, and long-term stability, then surely that's the starting point. So I'll be asking Ron tomorrow, what is it that you actually want? He's not a young man. I'm 50 and I don't feel like a young man. Some of you are younger than me, I'm sure, don't feel like young men after the last 72 hours. But
try 3 seasons.
Yeah. Does Ron want to stay on into his 70s in the hope of, the 3-sided stadium and the flats, or I see all the figures, I see a lot of the speculation. So the first question I want to ask is, what do you want? What do you want to do for the next 4 or 5 years, which will comfortably take you into your 70s? Do you want to open doors to people that care about the club, that have contacts? Like I say, if anybody can call up a Queen's Counsel or a barrister now and get them to act for free on behalf of you, do it, because it needs to be done. And these people will pore over all of the ownership structure, who owns what, why, when, how, what's to be made, what's not to be made, unrealistic and realistic expectations that Ron could realise if he got his wish. Councils, elections, all of those things are for a rainy day, further down the line. All I'm offering you guys is possibly the highest profile former Southend United player that is directly involved in media and has people interested in this situation, that has the very, very best interests at Southend United at heart. Again, like I said, if this is the first and the last time we speak, I'll still keep my eye on Southend. And in 8 years' time, if it's in the conference or if it's in the Premier League or in the Champions League, that won't change. There's a guy put a message on the forum earlier saying, oh, well, could it be that Stan, why now? We're relegated. Could it because it's a cheap asset? I have zero interest in putting up pounds, shillings and pence as a sole or joint ownership structure which throws money down a pit. That's for much, much wealthier people than I. And I see many people that I speak to would like to get into football clubs, and they are more than happy to get into football clubs on the basis that the supporters own the majority stake in the football club. This myth we have to get away from, that we can only compete and be successful if we have a wealthier owner than the next guy, is absurd. The current champions of Europe have a model which disproves that, as does every German football club. They're trying to change it. Red Bull Leipzig, you name it, they're trying to change it. But these are hardwired into the constitution of the club, and as a consequence, hardwired into the hearts and minds of fans. I also suggested, so the medium term, create a constitution and structure that doesn't allow for single party ownership. I've already told you why I don't believe that that is a sustainable model, even at the top of the game. There's even more issues and problems the further that you go down. The multi-millionaire scrap merchant, property tycoon, it's playing with danger every 3 years, 5 years on a loop. And the long-term vision, that stability and vision leads to a profitable and stable club with new facilities. I know I could sit with any council member at Southend United and they'll take my call. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in. Oh, Stan Collymore wants to meet me and have a little photo, but that's just the truth. It's not anything to laud. It's not. That's why I did a last big television project I did 18 months ago, and I put the list of players: Pele, Zico, Lineker, Neville, Klopp. They'll take the call directly. That's just the truth. Don't ask me why, but they do. So from a Southend perspective, to be able to put you guys front and centre, supporters club, Save Our Southend. Again, I always find it bizarre that football supporters aren't seen as multi-functioning business owners that have great ideas in their own right, instead of people that just come in on a Saturday with a scarf, shout for an hour and a half and go home, is to put a coherent plan together to address Ron selling, Ron not selling, Ron being open to some sort of structure where he gets what he wants, supporters get what they want, and a progressive football club. That's it. That is the beginning, the middle, and the end of it. And it's done because of 6 months that to this day is one of the most happy, fulfilling, special parts of my life. And I've said it before, I haven't said it in the last week. I said it 20 years ago. I said it at the time. I've said it, sat down with Chris on a number of occasions. So from my perspective, I'm in to be able to help in any way that you see fit. I think there is a conversation beyond ascertaining as to what Ron wants, with people in the region, in the area that have Southend at heart, stakeholders, council, local government, local big business, but most importantly, for football supporters at a football club to realise the potential of the club. I said today, drop a pin on Southend, draw 40 miles around, and you are taking a very football passionate, from the, whether it be from the East End, that old flight into Essex, of, you know, I don't know what they call them, C1s, D1s, whatever, relatively wealthy, want entertainment. Then you're talking about what Brentford and what Fulham and other clubs have done. Hey, we're right next to the River Thames. We're not Arsenal and Chelsea, but we can carve our own part of London for people to be able to come and support us and be part of a football club. So any questions you guys have, I'm more than willing to answer. Any suggestions, insight as to what you believe the state of the club is, I'm all ears.
Right, just so we'll throw the floor open. First of all, Sam, I just want to say, wow, that coming from an ex-player speaks so passionately about our club, and it's great to see a player come back and, almost thank us for the faith we put in you when you played for us, but to still be looking out for us and still be passionate about our club. That's really heartwarming, and I think I speak for everyone else in the group when I say that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'll throw the floor open. Who wants to ask a question first? Kerry?
Yeah. Sorry. Thanks for coming, Stan. This is
Oh no.
Wasn't expecting to this tonight, and also know Steve's appeared at the bottom of the screen as well. All right, Steve. First of all, have you seen the Copper 90 video that's doing the rounds?
I haven't, no.
Okay, we'll share that with you. No, it's not a look at me thing. I just happen to be the voice that was chosen to do it. We think that kind of puts into perspective where we have managed to get to as a football club. I think it's fair to say that every decision that's been made over the last 3 years has probably been the wrong decision. 3 managers with no league experience, a transfer policy that beggars belief. We just seem to buy crock after crock after crock, having to play your kids, not paying your players, and not paying the tax bill, which is essentially why we're here, because you didn't pay that until December, I think, by which time we'd 15 games into a season and got 2 points. And that's all.
Let me just get a pen that works. I'm writing notes and my pen's gone tits up. Hold on. I want to take some notes as well to reflect on. Sorry, pal, do go on.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So ultimately, we are where we are because he didn't pay the tax bill, which isn't the first time that's happened. It's not the first time we've been in court for winding up order. And every single time he's managed to pay the winding up order, which suggests that somewhere he's got the money to be able to do it. He seems to blame HMRC for this, which isn't really the case. HMRC will, once you're a risk trader, will take you down the court line the minute you're late with your tax bill. He doesn't seem to get that correlation. He doesn't seem to be understanding that by not paying the bills leads to embargoes, leads to transfer embargoes, leads to you basically scrapping around the free agent market. And no disrespect to the lads they brought in, but they were free agents for a reason. Either they weren't good enough or they were carrying injuries, and it doesn't seem to be that correlation. So we've had no stability. We've had no stability for 3 years. When he talks to us, he'll give you the Phil Brown stories and the Nile Ranger stories, which are the sort of stuff you'd reminisce in a pub about. You wouldn't necessarily want to look to the future, and it just seems to be a reluctance of looking to the future.
Kerry, I'm going to stop you there. What is your understanding? And I'll ask everybody. Everybody might have a completely different understanding. But I'm fully aware that in forums, a lot of information gets shared. I'm aware that supporters trusts, usually through open source or freedom of information requests, manage to get lots of really good information as to what the general picture is. But what is your general observation as to what the holding, the company that owns Southend United has in terms of an ability, whether it be through Ron and his associated businesses, to be able to run a stable football club?
I believe, and we've asked a question and not had an answer, that Southend United is a paper company that owns a couple. Excuse me, what's that noise that's come on? That's a paper company that owns a couple of player contracts, with the ground and all of the other businesses being owned separately by the chairman, which I think is the problem that we would all have, is that if you're unable to own your ground and you're unable to own the assets that go with it, running a club is going to be very difficult, because all you have is the name of the club and the contracts that go with it. And I think that's where we are. There are people here that got a greater understanding of that technical side of it. But as I say, we have been moving ground since 1977.
I know. I remember training at boots and laces and all of that kind of stuff being talked about then.
I mean, it goes back to obviously pre-Jobson days, and the bad relationship we had with Vic Jobson, which I think, if we're more honest with the supporters, would have been better in hindsight. And now we have a relationship with Ron. I think it's the fact that it's all smoke and mirrors, is that he's very evasive around talking about the finances of the club, and we're having this discussion at the moment about we move into faucets. How is the rent system working? And it's almost like, well, I'll charge you rent, but I'll write it off. And then that's a bit worrying, is that is there any advantage to Southend United Football Club for us moving to Fossett's Farm if actually none of the revenue streams are going to support the club in any way, shape or form? Because all we've then done is taken one really poorly run organisation and put it in a nice new shining three-sided stadium, and it's still a poorly run organisation. And that's, I think that's the conundrum we find ourselves in. It's breaking that link between him, the owner of the football club, and him, the property developer. Let him have his property development, but give us the club back. You know, I love the idea of fan ownership. I mean, frankly, that's magnificent. But let somebody who cares run that football club. And I think, and his refusal to appoint a CEO, he's doing everything. He's running his Martin Dawn, his property developers, Southend United. And from my point of view, I think he's taking the eye off the ball. I think he's got so far into his stadium that he's not really thought about the fact that the team that's going to play there next season is going to be hosting the likes of Weymouth and Kings Lynn.
All right.
And that's no slight on them. We absolutely deserve to be hosting them.
Okay, I do want to ask a question, and feel free anybody to answer it. It sounds a very obvious question, but from what I've read and ascertained already, there doesn't seem to be one specific answer. It's a little bit sort of hodgepodge. Who owns what at Southend United Football Club? Can anybody?
So Ron owns everything.
Right. So, and how is that split, Paul? If you could tell the ground, the name of the club, we're talking player contracts. Can you shed some light as to how?
Yeah, I'm not sure about players' contracts, but that'd be marginal. I mean, there are no assets. The football club has no assets. Ron owns everything. He's a total autocrat. No governance.
His son also on the owners list.
Ken, you're very faint.
Sorry, mate, I'm only on the phone. What about his son? He's involved in that as well, isn't he?
No, not the football club itself. He has an involvement in the property company.
Yeah, I think the issue we've got is Ron has created a situation where to any potential outside investment or buyer, the whole thing looks a terrible proposition. You've got different companies here, money's owed here, money's owed there, money's been shifted around. And from any accountant looking in on that, the whole thing just looks a complete mess. So
I don't think any of that matters above the football club, though, does it? Surely we don't. Well, frankly, I don't care what he does. I only care about the football.
Okay, so Paul, I want to ask you the question, and again, I really don't want to go down the road of Ron is this, and this. I think that for the purpose of this conversation is that we're trying to start at a point where acknowledgement of somebody putting their head above the parapet to own a football club and associated costs, generally speaking, is a good thing over a number of years. But at some point, a right turn has been made, and not many people from outside have been courted to be able to get the best possible outcomes for Southend United Football Club. Paul, what do you believe needs to happen? Again, forgetting ownership structures and what have you for a moment, what do you believe needs to happen at your football club for it to be stable and competitive in the short and medium term?
Well, yeah, okay. So it's all about money, probably. Change, obviously. We can't continue on this path. How to actually fix that is change at the top, 100%. You know.
Do you foresee Ron being a part of the solution, or it has to be?
Okay, so I believe, and I know plenty of people don't. I don't believe for a second that he's deliberately trying to break the football club. I think that he's been unable to support it in the way perhaps we would like it. If you look at the money that's changed hands over the years, the same amount of money changes hands that is required, but it's always too late. Okay, so he doesn't pay the taxman on time, he doesn't pay the players on time. He always pays it, so it's just purely poor management.
So it's a lack of planning, a lack of
yeah, absolutely, 100%. So that has to change.
Right. So
it's cash flow issues.
That's an encouraging thing for me, because if this is somebody that is running to Peter to pay Paul, that's one thing, and we've seen plenty of football clubs where that's been an issue, with the latest being up in front of HMRC, etc., etc. If we're suggesting here that there is and that's why I asked the question about associated companies, if there is real money coming into the companies that run and own Southend United Football Club, then surely we're on the right lines here by starting with having a conversation with Ron. And look, as I've mentioned with Fawaz and I've mentioned with Tom Fox at Aston Villa, I'm not in the business of sitting and just hearing a sales pitch that includes Sol Campbell, Henrik Larsson, you name it. I've heard it a million times. You've all heard it a million times. But if there's an opportunity, if there's the slightest door open for Ron to be open to other people helping to be able to get a structure at the football club, which sees them in the short and medium term competitive on the football side and business, then by what you're saying, Paul, that you believe that this is just a planning issue rather than one of cash flow or money or intent. It's a guy that has lost his way.
I think it's also, Stan, it's also giving us a terrible reputation, as you'll know from being in the game, that players talk to each other. And we get a reputation that Southend players don't get paid on time, and word gets round, and we don't become an attractive proposition to players and local businesses as well, who we know have been paid late, who've had to take the club to court for certain things. You get that reputation. You know, it takes years to build a good reputation, but seconds to lose it.
Absolutely.
I think. Sorry, go on.
Hey, Brian, how are you, pal?
Hello, mate. All right. I think on a football side, we seem to be the only football club on the planet that seems surprised by the start of the season. Every single year, we're just not prepared for it. On and off the field.
What do you give me an example?
Well, we just never seem to. We never seem to be.
You say every season. Give me an example of the last 5 or 6 seasons of season on season a lack of preparation.
It's the squad's never ready until a month or 2 months. I mean, this season it was what 15, 16 games before we got a win. But it's like everything is done late. We're a week before the start of the season and we haven't signed anyone or we don't seem organised. And my perspective, and
it's all down to the cash not being in place at the right time, surely, Brian, isn't it?
Paul, do you believe that the cash is
probably.
there?
But you know, if that's the case, you know, what I've just said is spot on. I don't see, you know, I go around like Chris, you know, working in the press. We work at other football clubs. I don't see this happening elsewhere.
No, I completely agree. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying it's about
no, absolutely. I think that
time. So planning.
I think the thing here is everyone in this Zoom meeting, we all want the same thing. We all want the same thing. I've said all along in my columns, relegation is not the bigger picture here. Sustaining the football club's the bigger picture here, and it has been all the way through. You know.
Okay, so we've got Richard, and Richard wants to ask a question. Then Liam.
I was just hi, Stan. I just really wanted to answer something you asked earlier, which is like, what did we want? And I think ultimately, and the absolute minimum we actually want is some sort of sustainability, because at the moment, obviously, we have this option of a dilapidated stadium that we have no income. And obviously at the moment, he's already said in one statement, he will still own the new ground, albeit 3 sides. So the income stream we get from that, he may or may not decide to part with some of that to do with whatever. But also, and the worrying thing as well, just as a slight aside on this, he said if ever we sold a player for any sort of sizable amount of money, he would be taking a lot of that back to pay off some of the debts. Now,
he reserved the right, to be fair, reserved the right. He didn't say it would.
But I mean, but it's sort of like it's an idle threat, perhaps. But the fact he's actually saying it, thinks he's probably thinking about it. Absolutely. But that's sort of like part of it. I mean, obviously the debts he's talking about, because he gives it this, I've just written off £7 million. The paper debt, which is pretty much what it is that the club owns, this £20 million debt we had, is a paper debt. I think we pay something like 400,000 plus a 50,000 management fee for the rent of Roots Hall and the training ground. So it's 450,000 per year. Now he bangs on about Swansea as being the shining example of a club that were very close to going out of the league, and they had a rundown Wretchfield, and they've gone to this all singing, all dancing, fantastic stadium, but they pay their council 180,000 per year or per season for that stadium. Our local rivals, Colchester, pay 130, 140 plus a small percentage of the attendance income, and Orient pay Barry Hearn 150,000. The slight difference being is they have to pay for repairs. So all this time we're having this thing sort of rammed down the throat, and I think part of this is just purely to put off people coming in and making offers. We have directors who are a lot more solvent than he is, who I wouldn't be surprised if they had the chance of having some involvement in the club without Ron Martin, would probably jump at the opportunity. But I'm just surmising. But yeah, I mean, ultimately we need some sort of sustainability and safeguard the future of that club.
You mentioned about directors and potential owners. I'll ask you as from somebody on the outside looking in, why do you feel that Ron hasn't sold the club? Why do you feel that he hasn't reached out and got other people involved?
I think he needs the money from building the houses on Fossett's Farm and at Roots Hall. I mean, the figures, as you probably heard somewhere, range from between 65 and 100 million that he stands to make, which I wouldn't turn my nose up at that either. And I kind of understand why. But I think, as you're probably talking about, is that there might be a way of splitting the playing side, which has no assets. So there's no actual value to the actual club, just an emotional value. Whereas obviously if he says, yeah, give me 60 million and you can build as well, and you can have that build, happy days. But I doubt for one moment that is what you're about.
That's the issue, isn't it? And speaking to people today in the football business and football law is that there's a very simple reason why nobody has come to take Southend, whether it be the club, the assets, lack of on board, is because, you know, the figures are prohibitive, to put it mildly. Liam, what's the question or what's the point you'd like to make, pal?
Hello, Stan. You mentioned earlier that you wanted to know about the short term and the medium term things that need to happen in order to secure the club.
Yes, please.
I think that Ron is open to working with people, and I think to achieve that, the absolute minimum you need a chief executive at the football club.
Why do you believe that hasn't happened yet?
Well, we did have one. Steve Kavanagh left, I want to say I think it was around Christmas 2014. Someone may very well correct me on that.
That's 7 years though, pal. That's not 7 days ago or 7 weeks ago.
Well, I think money. It's completely money. You can't afford it.
Right.
We had a chap come in from, where did he come from? He went to Blackburn.
Steve Waggett, yeah. Did a good job for a few months, 6 months or so, yeah. Good guy.
He has been promising to get a CEO for the last 2 years.
I think the problem we've got there with no CEO, Stan, is there's no link. There's Ron and the fans. There's nothing in between running the day-to-day.
Well, I think actually Scott's point just there has absolutely hit the nail on the head, because I think there's an argument that says Ron is not the worst football club owner in the country. However, he might be the worst person running a football club, because he has shown he is, essentially incompetent. He is not able to run a football club competently, to my view, right? And I won't speak on behalf of everybody here, but I'm sure there's some people that agree with me. He's not a competent man at operating the football club. He puts his hand in his pocket, or he finds money from other businesses, and he will do it, but he does it late. And the fact that as Scott has just said, the fact that there is no link between the running of the football club and the resources required to run the football club means that things like this happened at this season, where we're still in a transfer embargo by December, and we haven't signed anyone, and suddenly, and that's where it transfers to what's going on the pitch, and that's what upsets the fans, because the performances suffer, and it all becomes very, very cyclical. So because we have operated, I won't talk about single ownership models and fans and stuff like that, but Ron has shown he is willing to work with someone underneath him who is responsible for day-to-day running the football club not as like a profit-making business, but nevertheless like operationally. Do you know what I mean? They are responsible for making sure that the manager knows how much money he's got to spend and when he can spend it, making sure the players are paid on time, all the basic stuff that you would expect a business to do. So he's obviously willing to work with someone in that sort of structure. In more recent times, I think the question about what's going wrong with the club, I think, or why he hasn't let go. Originally, I think that was a fair point about him wanting all the money from the ground. But part of me thinks that at this point it's pride. I think he looks at the job. I think he looks at the situation Southend is in. And Chris has published his statements in the paper many times over the last 3 years, because we've been on a steady decline for a long time, you'll know. And he says, I'm the one to turn this around. I'm the only one that can do it. I'm the man.
Exactly. When I sat in a Belgravia £20 million home of Fawaz that had Fawaz on the front of Forest shirts and you know, you name Fawaz Refrigeration, a company that just sort of barely existed, is that the overriding theme that kept on coming was, I'm going to get them back into the Premier League, Stan, and then I'm going to get them into the Champions League, Stan, and I was relaying this afterwards to Nottingham Forest supporters groups and fans. And then he had the audacity to go on Midlands Today in a sort of gilded chair in his house and say the same thing. And people are just sitting there shaking their heads saying, well, this is kind of like, you know, Comical Alley in the fall of Baghdad. It's not in tune with reality. He was never going to take Nottingham Forest back to the Premier League because exactly the same thing. Debts were racking up. There wasn't a proper CEO. The English translator at his Kuwaiti cricket club became the de facto chairman of Nottingham Forest Football Club. And I was uncovering all of this. There was one agent that was essentially doing the bidding and going to find players that didn't know anything about players or agents or have any contacts, that was sitting in the Nottingham Forest boardroom with 2 European Champions Cups behind him, lauding it. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong, but I am suggesting that at 68, 69, with nobody to turn around and say, no, have you thought about this, this and this, that it's not going to get any better.
So that's what we're missing, because I think that it's all very, having aims is all very well. And Ron has got aims, but he has no strategy. Ron has an idea of what he wants the football club to do. But in my opinion, he has absolutely no idea how he is going to get there. He does not have a plan. He said as much. We had a Zoom call a couple of weeks ago, and he said, I don't have a plan for next season. I don't have a plan for the summer because I don't know what division we're going to be in. And those are pretty much word for word what he said.
Which, of course, a good CEO would say, you have to have a plan for both eventualities.
We're only going to be in 2 divisions. You only need 2 plans. No one is asking him to win us the Champions League in 5 years, but he doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have a strategy. He doesn't have it's really frustrating. I really think it comes down to his inability to operate the football club. And I do not think he will sell the club. I do not think he will be interested in sharing ownership until the stadium is built. That's my personal opinion. And I don't mean to dissuade you or your efforts to speak to him.
Look,
that's not the point.
You guys have spoken to him a number of times. So only Ron can tell me tomorrow. Absolutely. And he can either decide to bullshit me and say, we're going to win the Champions League in 5 years' time and everything's on track. Or he can, and as a courtesy to him, I know that some have raised questions about sharing emails and what have you to Ron. I understand it. But the initial strategy was, if somebody is going to continue to ignore you, then at some point you have to let people know, this is what I've done. Ironically, I shared a direct message on the Shrimper Zone forum, which said after the Carlisle game, look, please, I can help in any way. Please, somebody give me a call. The official account then said, oh, we're really sorry, we didn't say. So somebody has said to them, giving them a bollocking or something's happened. So you guys have spoken to Ron a lot. You're involved in the day-to-day thinking of what's going on, seeing what's going on, the little things that all of you will notice. I haven't been privy to that. But at least to get an idea of hopes, aims and ambitions, and realistic hopes, aims and ambitions is the first step. Because I hope he opens his door, and I hope that when he opens his door, he's open to new ideas. If he doesn't, then it might be lucky. It might come back at the first attempts next season, and the momentum of that carry the club through 2 or 3 seasons. But the point that I'm trying to make still remains, and this is why some kind of strategy that has some sort of constitutional element to it, which I know a lot of people think is daft, because why would any billionaire give away anything? But if that can run alongside a successful club, they're still getting what they want. The Qataris that invest in Bayern Munich are still making a shitload of money on the back of the name of Bayern Munich. The associated sponsors of Dortmund or St. Pauli or Schalke have just got relegated, so they're not a good example. They all still have very big sponsors and very big individuals that invest in the company. It doesn't put them off the fact that the club constitution has 51% fan ownership. But there is no doubt that a good season next season, coming back at the first attempt with Ron as is, may lead to a back-to-back promotion. But the issue's going to come back down the line, and Ron's going to be 74 or 76 or 78. And what happens then? So it would be remiss of everybody to sit back and say, well, actually, now's a good time for a reasonable man, if Ron is a reasonable man, and I know plenty of people that know him and say, and I've met him, and he was charming. He was very, very accommodating. We had a really good long, an hour and a half chat, albeit 20 years ago, is that to hold on to 100% of something that is going down the pan is not as good as owning 50% or bringing in a CEO or bringing in a group of people. That's your angle. If you want to go and have a chat with him, that's your angle.
After all, he was talking to Henrik Larsson about potential investment and help. So it does show that if help is willing, that he could be tempted by it. So depends what he says.
Can I just ask you all a question, and be as brief as you like? Scott, what do you believe are the biggest issues for Southend United Football Club in the next 5 years?
I think it's sustainability of the football club. We have no way of proving if Ron can still keep putting money in. We haven't got all the answers to them questions. So I think the paramount thing really is survival of the actual football club, and it being a solvent football club, because it doesn't seem to be getting better at all. So I think that's the major concern. Second to that, I would say, like Liam has said, it's about communication as well. It's the link between Ron and the fans. There's no middleman. A lot of people don't like the word middle management, but if there was ever a case for somewhere that needed middle management, it's Southend United at the moment. It's a club that this club used to be at the heart of the community in Southend, right? And it just feels now that we're just with such a bad reputation, with the stadium's gone on for so long, people who aren't even supporters of Southend live in the town and say, I'm a taxi driver, they get in my cab and say, oh, are they getting their new stadium? What's happening with their stadium? And it's the same questions all the time. Nothing ever moves forward. We stick with this dream all the time, but while we're trying to realise this dream, everything is going down the pan, it seems, and it needs to
right. I'll go through from what I see on the people's names along the top. Brian.
The momentum that the football club's got at the moment, and I'm talking on a football term here, having covered games at Dagenham this year and seen a lot of the conference teams, we will go down again next year.
So you're worried about being competitive in the short term?
Look, I'm worried about that, but as Scott said and Liam, the sustainability of the football club is the big picture at the moment. I don't think there's any connection between Ron and the fans anymore at all. It's steadily got worse, but this is the worst point it's ever been.
Totally agree. totally agree.
It is, isn't it? It's the worst point.
Right, let me go back again. Let me just go to who I'm seeing on the screen. Kerry.
I agree with the sustainability point. I don't see how we're going to get out of this mess. I think there's a complete disconnect, lack of trust now between the supporters base and the chairman. When Ron came in, I said Vic Jobson with PR skills. I think I'm probably right. And I don't see next season people turning up at Roots Hall in their droves to watch the games if his name is still on the club. I think it's broken.
Christoph, I can't hear you, pal.
At the minute, I think we're more likely to be in the National League South come 2022 than we are back in League Two. So, you know, we're on a decline. We're on a massive decline, and it's just got to be halted.
Liam?
Yeah, in the short term, competitiveness is what I'm worried about. We have been the worst club in England for nearly 3 years at this point. By the time the next season starts, we'll have been the worst club in England for 3 years. We'll have lost, I reckon, more percentage of our games than anybody else. We will go into next season with, I think, 4 of the current squad still under contract, and Phil Brown's management. I think that's right, but I might be wrong. Give or take 1 or 2.
I'll have a look.
And Phil Brown, I understand, was offered a 3-year deal but turned it down because he presumably doesn't want to carry on at the reins of this club beyond the end of the season because he doesn't know where they'll be. So we'll have no manager. We'll have about 4 players. And about 10 years ago, when Paul Sturrock came in, his little black book got us out of this because we were still a Football League club. In non-league, with the reputation that we've got that people have mentioned in terms of not paying players, we'd struggle to put a squad together. We're very, very. I would put money on us getting relegated next season.
I mean,
sorry, I'll come back to you, Brian. Let's just get some other people's opinions. Eden.
I think everyone's got the same opinion, to be honest. Not only is it probably a reputation of not paying players, it's probably a reputation of treating players like absolute dirt for the last 3 years. I could name several players that I know have been treated terribly behind the scenes.
Do any of these players come out and say, I had a really shit experience and I wouldn't recommend going to Southend, or is this sort of just a feeling?
The ones that retire have, put it that way. So, yeah, there's players out there. I can name you a few names after this if you want. But, yeah, so, but yeah, everyone's hitting the nail on the head. Sustainability. Next season, yeah, there's already teams in the conference now that are bigger, that are better than us. You know, I've watched about 3 games in the conference this year; they'd all beat us. So
about 23 of them, dude.
Yeah. So,
Guy, you're mute, pal.
I think in the short term, I'm desperately keen to see us have a proper summer and to actually have a manager at the start pre-season on time, not 3 weeks after everyone else like last year. The very basic stuff in the short term. But yeah, I mean, I think Scott and Eden both made the point that I just want a club to be proud of again. I'm sick of us treating everyone we come across like dirt. We're supposed to be a club. We're a small club in a community, and it's not just players either. It's former staff, it's businesses. He's just got a way of just treating people really badly, and we can't have that. We can't have that as a community club. So that's my point. I would say a club to be proud of again.
I think just to put.
I'm going to move it on because the people I haven't spoke to, so I will come back. I know that Smithy, please.
Yeah, basically, I just want my club back.
What does that mean? We all say, I said exactly the same with Aston Villa. I want my club back, from Randy Lerner, from Dr. Tony Shear. What does that tangibly mean to you? The last, Jai just said, treating people properly. Some of the guys have said planning, the basics, to be competitive, reputational damage to be turned round, a two-way street of communication between the club and supporters. So what does that statement mean to you?
Well, personally, to me, it went downhill. I know he's in here, Tilly. Welcome. It went downhill when Tilly was treated badly. Let's be honest. It was turfed out. It pissed a lot of people off. The way it was done, why it was done, disgusting. And that's when me personally, when things started changing for me, I felt that the way it was dealt with was completely wrong. Not only that, there was the first murmurings of players and staff members going unpaid as well. That didn't sit well with me. And that was the turning point for me from going home and away every week. It started to get less and less and less for me because I just didn't agree with the way the club was being operated from that point. And it's been up and down since, but let's be honest, the last 3 or 4 years has been absolutely disgusting the way it's been happening. We've probably had more transfer embargoes than anyone else, maybe with the exception of Bury, etc. You know, high court appearances. How many other teams in the Football League at the moment have been in court as much as we have? I don't know. I think you'll struggle to find any other club with a record that we have in terms of high court writs and stuff, you know. So for me, I want a club to be proud of again. I want a club where I feel part of, in terms of, I feel like we're treated like actual supporters, like people, not like a number, not like someone on the bottom of the shoe. And I know a lot of people feel the same because a lot of friends that also went at the same time as me, some still go, some don't. A lot have the same opinion of me, in that it's just a poorly operated club and we no longer feel part of it. We want our club back and we want to just be part of it again. You know, we want to help. We want to help. That's the thing. Supporters all around the club have offered their help to Ron for various things. He keeps batting it away. He doesn't seem to want to let anyone get involved with it for some reason. I don't know why. Me personally, I'm quite happy for Ron to walk away, make his money with the housing, as long as he leaves the club in a sustainable position where we've got ownership of our own ground and our own training ground. He can make as much money as he likes on the housing side, really don't care. But me personally, I feel he needs to step aside and let someone else run the club that actually knows how to operate a football club. That's what I want.
Absolutely fantastic, pal. Michelle, please.
I'm here. Hi.
How are you?
I just think it's become so depressing being a Southend fan. I run the home fans pub. So years ago, it used to be excitement on match days. Everyone was, anticipating what the score was going to be. It was a really great atmosphere, and we used to love match days. And it's got to the point now where it's got worse and worse and worse, to the point that every time you think it can't get any worse, it does. And yeah, it's just nothing. Doesn't seem to be anything to look forward to anymore. It's just horrible.
Napa?
I don't think many people on. I think he's so like I said, he goes radio silence for such a long time. No one knows what's going on, and then he'll pull something out of the bag, and with the whole Phil Brown appointment that gets people going again. But then he's just almost like trying to bat it away. He's doing something to try and bring the fans back on side, but he's not doing enough.
Okay, Michelle, thank you. Napa, you're on mute, pal.
Yes, right. I'm back. Right, yeah. So, I mean,
what do you want from your football club in the short to medium term?
In the short to medium term, pay our suppliers, pay our players, pay the tax bill, make sure cash flow is coming in, sort out all of the companies. So Rootsall is actually owned by the club rather than by Rootsall Limited. Sort out what's going on with citizen housing and all the various companies that have registered in the Cayman Islands and British Virgin Islands. Sorts out the transparency at a corporate level, because we don't really know what Ron owns and what company owns part of what.
Has there ever been a situation in Ron's tenure? And again, I'm doing this as a fact-finding thing to ask questions. I'm certainly not going to bowl in and start effing and blinding. Has there ever been a sit down between you and the ownership whereby they have given you, this is what the structure of Southend United Football Club is, and you can rest assured that it is all legit, all above board, and for the sole purpose of the progression of Southend United?
No. It's not a secret, though, is it? No, it's a secret. We all
know. It's still from a fan's perspective. A lot of clubs go out of their way to say, this is our structure, I'm the sole owner, I'll do with it ultimately what I like, but I hear what you say, and if you have any questions in terms of shell companies, service companies, other people, other owners. I will happily sit down with you and tell you that blatantly hasn't been the case.
Yeah.
Paul?
I mean, obviously Ron has taken 22 years to deliver. There's no new
non-league football.
There's no new stadium. We're back to where we started. You know, 1998 when he took over, we were in the 4th division. We've had a few nice years in you know, divisions up, but that's it. You know, so he literally has. If he was employed in a normal job, he'd have been sacked many times. You know, and I think Ron, you know, for all his he's a narcissist. Everything is about him. Everything is about him. He's an ego-driven, stubborn narcissist who thinks that the whole world revolves around him. And you know what? Southend is nothing without the community, without the fans. I came across some scrapbooks from the 1950s, and it's full of Southend United stuff, and it's full of the whole community getting together to build Roots Hall from scratch. Now, we're here, the fans are here, the support is here. I mean, the number of people who turn up at short notice for this is incredible. You know, we've got senior fans here who've been supporting the club for many, many years, you know, and it just maddens me that there's just one person responsible for all of this and for all of this demise. And it's got to be laid at his door. That's it. Bottom line, it's all about Ron. There's nothing in place. There's no sustainability. There's no strategy. There's no plans. There's nothing. All about him. When we win, it's Ron. When we fail, it's not me.
Thank you. Ken, please. Good evening.
My problem is, I think we went on a downward spiral for so long that we now become a joke club throughout the country, and that would dissuade anybody coming to the club, whether it be a CEO or whether it be players. And also, if when we get to the new stadium, and Ron has the money and everything else from the housing, how are we going to sustain ourselves financially? We've already been told several things about, you can't do this at the new ground, you can't have concerts like you do up at Colchester. There's so many things that the council have restricted us doing. So there are both councils, yeah. The problem being, we need to look at ways as to how we could be financially sustainable.
That's the question. James, good evening.
Hi, Stan, thank you. Yeah, same for me, really, sustainability, and kind of linking into what Ken just said, really. I think a lot more information about how the club's going to benefit from the new stadium, because the way I see it at the minute, as someone else said earlier, you're plonking a badly performing club into a shiny new stadium, and you can't see where the revenue streams are really coming from. He said on a Zoom call once, and I quote, this club is going to benefit from revenue streams that other clubs at our level could only dream of. Since then, he said that he can no longer put the hotel in the stadium. Since then, he said he can no longer concerts at the stadium. Since then, he said that he will own the ground. So what revenue streams will the club actually hold in this new stadium, and how is it going to become self-sustainable? I'm struggling to see it at the moment. But then also, yeah, a lot of what other people have said about the club's stature, I think it's in the drain at the moment throughout the game. Someone said about Chinese whispers, agents, players, chairmen at other clubs not wanting to loan us players, from what I've heard, because we haven't paid them historical fees. Our reputation, as far as I can tell, is in the gutter. And I'm not convinced that that's ever going to change whilst he is still at the helm. And I just want to see a link between the club and the fans again. The atmosphere is toxic. You can probably tell from what a lot of us have said tonight, Stan. It's toxic. He doesn't make much of an effort to communicate with us. It doesn't feel like it's a fans club anymore. And I mean, I know it's not in the ownership structure, but a lot of us just feel so disconnected at the moment. And I feel sometimes like I emailed him once and told him about how worried I was about certain aspects of the club, speaking from the heart, really. And his message back to me was, you don't need to worry. It's my job to worry. And I feel like you know, he's a businessman. I get he's seeing it as a business and he wants to make some money off it, but he comes out and says, "Oh, I'm hurting just as much of you as you guys, if not more." But he just can't seem to reconcile that. For a lot of us, this is like watching a relative die. I don't think he will. He's just not getting it. I don't know how else to put it, really.
Thanks, Paul. Joe?
Hey, Stan. I think for me, main thing is got to restore and repair the reputation of the club, because at the moment, agents, players just won't entertain, you know, even talking to Ron, let alone coming to us. And, you know, as you know, the club's only ever as good as its recruitment. And it's just been, the last 3 years has just been tragic from that angle. And the other thing I think is just, you know, want to start seeing sort of sensible strategic decisions being made. I mean, I was actually quite pleased last summer when Ron went for Mark Molesley. You know, been successful in non-league, 2 promotions in 3 years, young, hungry, and we seem to have a plan finally. You know, albeit he was appointed 6 weeks too late. But then here we are, sort of April time, and he's gone back and we've now hired Phil Brown, who, you know, we've heard from Ron over the last few months, and he was blaming Phil for, you know, for the situation we find ourselves in right now. You know, signing injury-prone, overpaid players, and here we are. He's gone back to that man. So it feels like we've taken 2 steps back with with sacking Mark and bringing Phil in for me.
Billy, good evening, pal.
Hello, we do it.
How are you, pal? You well?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. All good.
I'm not going to ask you any leading questions that I know that would make it difficult. Player, manager, legend, local. You've heard what a lot of the guys have said. You've obviously, through Chris, understand what I'm trying to do, which is just to have a conversation with the most important people, supporters groups, fans, long-standing fans. Was contacted Ron's secretary this evening, gonna have a chat with him tomorrow. Chatted to Villa ownership, Forest ownership when they've had issues and problems. I'm fully aware of how they speak and the promises and what have been made. I guess the only question from somebody that is uniquely placed geographically and with the club is that from a manager's perspective, whereby you're looking to be able to get players on loan, buy players, to be able to plan a future, a season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons down the line, to be able to entice really good support staff, physios, data people, whoever it is around the club. It seems as if the club are quite some distance away from that. So if you were putting a pitch to an owner, let's not say Ron for now, but anybody else, with your manager's hat on, with your experienced pros hat on, and understanding the region as you do, what would those initial short and medium long-term advisories be?
I think, like most of what people have said today, for sure Ron needs someone in between. Without a doubt needs a chief exec. Ron's trying to do everything on his own. I didn't even know he had a secretary, to be honest. So for sure he exec in there. I'll be honest, Stan, over maybe not so much this year, but over the previous 2 or 3 years, Southend have had one of the biggest budgets in the league. They've paid, their wages have been phenomenal for bang average footballers. So recruitment has been dreadful. So for sure, on the recruitment side, someone has got to go in there, head of recruitment, and can get a lot better players than what they've been paying. You know, they were paying £5,000, £6,000, £7,000 a week for players that, you know, most of them were finished. So from
I'm just going to share a story. My highest wage at Southend was 550 quid, which makes 12 grand in earnings in the 6 months for a £3.5 million payback from Nottingham Forest. I think that's fucking value. Lightening the mood somewhat. Go on, Tilly.
You must have been the only one that was less than me then, because I was
I weren't I think the likes of Davy Martin, the old long twos that were going and going, oh, give me a 5-year deal on this. But you were worth every penny, pal. Trust me.
No, like I say, you know, people saying Ron hasn't got the money. I'm not sure because, as I said, I think last year the wage bill was 1.5 million. But the years before, the 2 previous years before that, you're looking at £3 million. That was a lot of money in League One. A lot of money. That's, you know, that's in the top 6 budgets. So I'm not sure he hasn't got the money. He just needs. He needs some help. But he wants to need the help for the club to push on.
So Tilly, why do you think the late bills and the rocking up to HMRC? Because look, if this is a football club or whether it's Stan Collymore, ironmongers, if you keep turning up to court appearances, eventually the people that trade with you aren't going to want to trade with you. And all of you guys have made the great point that this is going to have a material damage on, you know, being able to get loans from decent clubs to be able to buy players because they're not going to want to come if they're not going to get paid. If the money was there, and we're talking, again, significant budgets, you've shone a spotlight on that. Where has this all gone wrong, in your opinion, for Ron? Is he just reining it in? Is he just waiting now for this dream of a new stadium and more rents and more money coming in? What do you believe is the answer to that?
Stan, when I originally joined with Big Johnson in charge, they were talking about a new stadium. I think, you know, at the moment, we've got to put this new stadium to bed. It's been going on and on and on. You know, we've got to put that at the back of our mind and look forward without that at the moment, because that, you know, again, it's all gone quiet. I just feel, as a lot of the fans have said on tonight's meeting, I feel that over the last 6, 7, 8 years, there's no affinity between the fans and the players, the fans and the management, the fans and Ron. That needs to come back, and that can come back with bringing in local players. There's plenty of local players out there that are a lot better than what I've seen this year. You know, that you could get on peanuts that want that opportunity to try and play professional football. So, you know, for me, it's just trying to get that affinity back with between the fans and the players, the management, the chairman to start with, because I haven't seen that. It's dead.
Dilly, superb. Chris, I want to ask you a question from a journalist's point of view that's been covering this patch and would obviously get the old mailbag or emails and messages and DMs. What is the overriding sense? I mean, it's clear cut for me in terms of there's been breakdown in trust, you know, late shows at High Court to pay bills, which has material and potentially catastrophic issues in terms of players wanting to go and play for Southend United Football Club. The middleman, the CEO, somebody to come in and be a very good conduit between Ron and players, manager and supporters. What are the things that you, if there were 5 or 6 buzzwords, what are Southend United fans saying to you?
It's dejection, it's heartbreak, it's frustration, it's everything. There's just nothing positive at all. I mean, I'm a fan as well, irrespective of my job, and it's just one bad thing after another, and echoing what everyone else has said. But there's no structure within the club. It's just always papering over the cracks, time after time after time, and that can only go for so long. And people always mention the CEO, but there's so many positions that people have left. The stadium manager left, and that got passed on to someone else who was already at the club. The club secretary left. Those responsibilities got pushed on to 2 other people who were already at the club. So
that's arguably as well. I mean, Tilly will tell you, one of the, you know, people obviously look at CEOs because they're the slick money man, but a club secretary, knowing the ins and outs of the league and protocols are an absolute must.
Last season, for instance, we played an ineligible player and almost got a point deduction. It was
there's your answer for not having a club secretary.
I mean, then you would have been there, and Tilly as well. Helen was, I know she was fantastic. Yeah, she was brilliant.
So stadium manager, club secretary, CEO, any other positions to your knowledge that have gone and haven't been refilled?
No, they're
Striker.
Striker, yeah.
You'll get one, don't worry. One of the days it'll come.
But there's no football knowledge. That's the problem as well. Ron's trying to do too much and he tries to do everything, and there's no football knowledge, and that's such a big problem because there's no one to. I mean, look at Mark Moseley, for instance. Okay, yeah, he did make a few decisions, but he was inexperienced. If you were going to bring in him, you needed someone experienced to come along to help him. And there's just no figurehead. There's no one with any football knowledge whatsoever, and that's a huge, huge problem because Ron's trying to do it all, and with all the will in the world, he doesn't understand football as well as he might, shall we say?
Where we're back to. Right, so James and Peter have got their hands up. Let's start with Peter. Hello, Peter.
Hi, Stan. Yeah, just to elaborate more on the money issues. What in my opinion is in Rod's business, he doesn't have a steady cash flow coming into his companies. So what the issue is.
Again, with the playing devil's advocate, I'm diving in there. £1.5 million season before last or last season. Before that, in League One, 3 million a season. They're about £6-7 grand a player. There was cash flow then. So what's happened? Let's not guess and surmise. But is there anything whereby those dots that were joined and paying top level League Two and League One wages isn't happening now?
So he borrows against assets. He's very wealthy in terms of assets. He borrows against assets and he gambles. He gambles highly, as Tilly said, signs lots of players on high contracts. Then he's got that cash in hand in the bank, as to speak. That cash runs out. He's got the same problem again. And because of the line of business he can't just sell, huge land and property, within a week to get that money back. He may have to wait 6 months. It might be tied into deals which pay back, every 2 years almost. Then he gets his windfall and the process begins again. He gambles and he loses. And it keeps continuing. Well, it's continued for the last several years now.
So a lack of a plan. James, you there? We just lost James, I think, there. I think he had his...
You're on mute, mate.
Hold on. Are you there, James?
Yeah, I'm there. Sorry. Yeah, I was just going to... I was wanting to say earlier was, yeah, just structure and, forward planning. I mean, he to all intents and purposes, he comes across as a businessman on the football side of things. That doesn't seem to be happening in terms of the planning. I don't feel like there's much of a strategy there. And I can't remember who it was who was mentioning earlier. I think it might have been Liam who said that in one of the recent meetings he said, "Oh, I don't have any plans for next season yet. I don't." Another thing that I recall him saying in another meeting when he was questioned about how we were fitting a past player into the budget was he said he actually said, "I don't have a budget." And
so this would lean into what I don't know. As Peter just said, is that we're guessing, so we have to be very careful here. There are big chunks of money coming in at certain times, and it's being spent, and then there isn't so much of a big chunk coming in, and then it's a last-minute dash to HMRC.
Yeah, exactly. There's just a lack of organisation and planning on a very basic level.
On the face of it, I mean, firstly, thank you for everybody for adding quite incredible insight and knowledge. Is that on the face of it, if this is a situation whereby Ron turns round and says, "I'm going to stay, I want to stay," I'm open to some sort of help, I'm open to new voices, ideas, old voices, legends that know the region, that understand the club, that understand the absolute musts that a manager must be given, support from a club secretary, support from local scouts, support from all number of positions as a CEO, is that if the money is there and he's willing to sit down and look at a plan that can then come up with a short, again, going back to my first point, a short and a medium term plan and how to fund the club. I agree with Tilly. I think that the talk of a stadium at this time is complete folly, because what you are doing, and I'm almost horrified to hear that plans are drawn up, goes to the local council. Before going to the local council, we're going to have Bon Jovi at the new stadium and a winter ice rink, and we're going to have this, that, and the other. And then the council turn around and say no. Now, is there a remit for somebody like me to walk into the council and to be able to have, again, another honest and open conversation and say, and put the benefits on behalf of the fans, Ron, whoever, to see the bigger picture? Potentially, yes, there is. But in the short term, a stadium that can't generate the kinds of revenue that the club would need seems like a bit of an albatross round the neck, and something that I would suggest. And you guys, I'm sure that whether you're business owners or have had business interests, you're not going to go and buy 5 new tractors if there's, you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic and I can't get out onto the farm. It seems a little bit like that. So from my perspective, at least I know now, and I've got very good numbers there and ideas for in terms of Tilly, in terms of what speculation and an outlay Ron is willing to go with his gut feeling when he feels good, and also potentially what the mechanics of his finances are, the club's finances, when the going isn't so good. Feast and famine, feast and famine. We go up 2 divisions, have great days out at Wembley, paying players 6-7 grand. 5, 6, 7 years later in the champion, in non-league, in the national league. If all that can be evened out and ironed out in either an existing vehicle or a new vehicle or a mix of both, I honestly don't see that there's a great deal of problems, because things like bridges built with other football clubs in terms of loans, buying players, talking to players. You know, I again, having had conversations with Matthew Benham at Brentford, Les Ferdinand at QPR, you go round to somebody's house with a Southend or a QPR badge and say, look, we want you to play for us, pretty much like Colin Murphy and Bobby Houghton did to me. Come and play here, see where it takes you, and there are plenty of people that can do that job. That's the least worry. What they want to know and what their parents want to know and what their agents want to know is that those contracts are going to be honoured, and that's a problem in the very short term in terms of getting players to Southend United Football Club. All I can offer you is, in terms of the QC and the barrister, to be able to go over anything that is tangible documentation that could be poured over. Should Ron turn around and say, no, not interested, it's staying as it is, to be able to put some sort of document together that then you guys can look at and say, well, actually, we want to go down an angle now of opposing Ron being at the club per se, and we're looking at vehicles to be able to take the club off him, which obviously is very difficult because of the financial things that we said, but not impossible. But I've got everything I need to be able to go to him with. I was looking at phrases that you guys were saying, and it's the sustainability and the lack of trust and the lack of respect shown to supporters from the perspective of players and managers wanting to go to the club. Why would they? All of those things can be addressed to a degree, but ultimately it's going to be, Ron, do you want to stay at Southend United Football Club in the position that you're in now? Are you going to say to me, Stan, we're going to come up at the first attempt next season? Thank you very much. It's been lovely having a coffee with you. I shall invite Tilly next week, and I shall invite so-and-so the week after, and we'll have a lovely, rare old time. That wouldn't be acceptable to me. I will make it known that from my perspective, that there are other alternative avenues that should be gone down, because it's not my club, it's not Ron's club, it's your club. And ultimately, you should just think about my involvement as using a high-profile former player to be able to get your aims achieved. That's it. Yes, I can be very blunt, very rude, very uncouth, but don't get carried away with the sort of cartoon character element. In my own life, I've dealt with a lot of big companies, organisations, can get on the phone to anybody in the game to say, could you be able to, look, I know that there's been an issue before, but can we get 2 or 3 players from you? Could we do this? Could we do that? Big banks, big organisations, big finance houses. That's so far down the line that it's unimportant at the moment. But all I wanted to do is to say that from my perspective, I would love to be able to 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line, see a sustainable, competitive Southend United Football Club. That's the club that I joined in the Championship under eerily similar circumstances, but the Championship not dropping out of the league. If you have any questions beyond this, I'm sure either through Chris or Scott or anybody that I can give my email address and number, ask me directly. Don't guess, don't speculate. It seems you've been used to that. You're literally like, what's going on? Ask me directly. Chris and I have communicated over a number of years now through Twitter. If anybody has a question and says, well, I'm not quite sure of this, is this real? Is this true? Ask me directly and I'll answer you directly. I'm a massive fan of fresh ideas in the sport, because the question that keeps, or the statement that keeps being thrown back is, leave it to industry professionals. Well, I have only made money in the last 30 years through association football, whether it be as a footballer or as a broadcaster. I've seen many, many clubs. The most galling one is the club that I support, but not far off, Nottingham Forest. Manager after manager after manager, football men, here today for 6 months, 12 months, take a shitload of money out of the club. Several owners coming in. Like I say, Nottingham Forest Football Club's owner had money that didn't really manifest itself, and the de facto chairman of the football club on a day-to-day basis got the job as chairman and CEO of Nottingham Forest Football Club because he was the translator of the owner's Kuwait cricket club. We know it. We see the characters in the game. So this kind of mythology that people are 10, 15, 20, 30 year industry professionals, some of them have got lucky, some of them have got dough, some of them are corrupt, which is why I go back to the first point that I made in terms of the longer term structure of the club. That's for the fan groups to decide. But I guarantee the 50+1 model could give you a constitutional right to have a club, a constitutional right to have the main say, while still being able to have any corporate entity of your choosing or number of to be able to invest in Southend United Football Club, including a Ron Martin. But you have the say, not you're waiting for him to give you one of those. And that's why I'm a big fan of that model. I had a guy the other day on Shrimper Zone looking to buy an Austrian club. And he said, have a look at my proposal, 50+1, great opportunity here. And I looked, it was a great proposal. The reason why Austrian and lower league German clubs aren't being bought 10 a penny is because there aren't narcissists out there that are willing to share ownership. We all are hostages at all of our clubs, and I am a 40-year supporter, fan, player, season ticket holder of Aston Villa. We were that close with Dr. Tony's year to going out of business. The Chinese authorities, as we speak, are looking for him for financial issues. At Aston Villa, the Glazers at United. So at Southend, with respect, it might be a guy that comes and gives 5 years of stability, but your kids, grandkids, great-grandkids are going to have the same conversation at some point down the line, because that's what happens. The guy at Nottingham Forest, what's his name, passed away. He had a heart attack. Forest fans loved him. He was a fan. Then the daughter and son don't want any part of it. It gets sold to the Kuwaiti guy. So it's not just a case of Sheikh Mansour is going to be here for the next 50 years. his son and daughter may want no truck with Manchester City, and they might turn around and say, we're going to sell it, and Manchester City might be this grand edifice that goes plummets like a stone. What we're trying to aim and do is to be in a position to have a conversation, to be able to give Southend sustainability, stability, and that's on you how you see that moving forward. But I can help, and as I've said to Ron a number of times in the club, I can help, I will help. Contacts, financial people, you name it, ideas, passion, a genuine love for the football club, and wanting to take nothing away from it. I mean, I've offered so many times now, it feels embarrassing because you think to yourself, well, okay, I fully understand. There's a name that comes with baggage, but I'm not an idiot either. I don't need to get involved in anything that I don't want to get involved in. I could just sit by the side and write a few tweets. Ron is at this, and get lots of likes and great Stan. Remember the good old days at the Hall. I want to roll my sleeves up and be able to sit down with Ron and other people to be able to see you guys have a really progressive football club to be a part of. So that's it from me, Scott. I really appreciate your time, everybody. I know that it's been, an hour and a half now, so we've had a good 90 minutes of knocking things around. In the very short term, I shall await Ron's call tomorrow. I won't, out of courtesy, give soup and nuts in terms of every single thing that's been talked about, because he may not want to, and he might turn around and say, look, Stan, I'm willing to have a conversation, but can we have the conversation? Can we not just have sort of minute by minute, play by play, and then maybe reconvene Monday or Tuesday or early next week, see what's happened. I believe it. So Scott, what's the situation regarding any protests?
Right. So there is some fans that are deciding to go down to the club on Saturday to protest. I'm not sure on numbers, but that's where it stands at the moment. They're going down there about 1-2 o'clock in the afternoon. Right.
So we'll see how that plays out as well. And at some point, obviously, things are going to start to open up now, and travel is much easier. I'd love to sit down and have a face-to-face with you guys, but don't think I'm just here to send a few tweets, to have a Zoom call and go, great, rah, rah, rah. This has been something that, in terms of if a club is functioning well, it doesn't need me anywhere near it. I'd love to be invited down now and again and go and watch a game at the Hall like I would at the City Ground or at Villa. But as a 50-year-old man that has my head mostly screwed on these days, I feel that there's something that I can offer to the process of Southend United being all of those things that you demand it to be. So please use me as a conduit, as much or as little as you'd like to.
Just a couple of things in closing, Stan. I think the first thing is that it needs to be said. One of the most heartbreaking things about this football club is the potential of this football club. Yes. Over 175,000 people live in the borough of Southend alone. And with the surrounding area, that goes well over 250,000 people. One of the most densely populated areas outside of London as well, right? And we've got a football club that's falling into the National League. The town at some point will become a city. It keeps on growing. And it's a travesty that we're in the situation that we're in. Secondly, I would just like to say on behalf of everyone here and all the fans, it has been totally heartwarming to see somebody like yourself who has put their head above the parapet and is not just giving us a load of old spiel and actually wants to help. And if that's okay with you, I'll get your contact details off Chris and we'll reconvene at some point going forward. And if you can help us a bit with our campaign, i.e. exposure, retweeting some of our tweets that just gets things moving, because the problem we've had is not a lot of other fans in the country know what's going on at Southend, but they knew what was going on at Blackpool. They knew what was going on at Leyton Orient, and they knew what was going on at Charlton.
Exactly, yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for all of that, Stan. And yeah, if anyone wants to say anything else, that's fine. But from me, I just want to thank you. Very very nice of you to attend and speak to us so passionately.
I think that's the most positive 90 minutes we've spent together for a long time.
Yeah, I was about to say the same.
Absolutely.
Don't worry, it'll come. There'll be plenty more. That's the circle of football. But I think that to be able to address your issues and get them answered ASAP is going to do nobody any harm. Let's be honest.
Well, I think that's it for every. Thank you very much, Stan.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Cheers, Stan.
Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Good man.